And Mike, we're going to kick it over to you.
All right, let me share my screen and we'll get rolling here. Make sure I pick the right one. Yep, that's the screen. Click, and I'm on.
You're on.
All right, cool. All right, guys, today I'm not here to give you a list of AI tools. I want to show you actually how I use AI. Because for me, the biggest change isn't doing the same things faster, it's being able to do things I probably wouldn't have attempted before. So I'll show you a few principles and then I'll show you what happened when I put them all together. So a little bit about me. I'm a tech nerd. I currently live in Mapleton, Utah. I guess I got to specify that now because I learned our audience is much broader than just Utah, which is great. I live here with my wife and our 4 kids. I went to BYU, studied computer science. When I graduated, I got a job at Nemify, where I was their first formal IT employee. I've been there for 19 years. I'm now the chief technology officer and I lead our engineering systems and product teams. I'm also the founder of FeatherQuest, where I've become a photographer, author, entrepreneur, and learned a whole lot about marketing, sales, SEO. And I'm not suddenly an expert on everything on this slide, but I do have deep expertise in some areas and far less in others. But AI lets me leverage what I already know. And more importantly, it lets me move competently into these other areas. So AI makes me faster, probably sounds obvious, but I don't mean that 4 hours of work suddenly takes 4 minutes. I still might spend 4 hours. I just get a lot farther. I can explore more possibilities, challenge assumptions, and I iterate before I decide. The speed comes from execution. AI makes it incredibly cheap to try the next idea, build it, look at it, react, change. But there's also a danger there too, because AI can make bad work faster. I'll see it in coding. Something can technically work, and I can look at it and say, no, that's just wrong for this architecture. My expertise still matters a lot. So I don't just finish faster, I go farther. But how does someone actually go farther? And for me, that starts with thinking. So that might actually be my most common use of AI. A lot of my AI conversations start with, here's what I'm thinking. I throw out a half form idea. I start pulling it out. I say, what am I missing? Am I overcomplicating this? Is there another way to look at it? And I'll push back. And sometimes the best conversation is the one where I convince AI that its first answer was actually wrong. Programmers call something similar rubber ducking. Sometimes just explaining the problem clearly out loud helps you solve it yourself. And I do that constantly with AI. Sometimes I barely even need its answer by the time I finish typing in my question. But except when I do need its answer, it can actually talk back. Um, but AI can be wrong. And sometimes it's really obvious. We've all seen it hallucinate, spelling errors, math errors. It really starts getting dangerous when it looks right, but it really is wrong. So I like to say that I trust AI like a person, but not necessarily as the truth. And all that applies when I'm dealing with other experts too. Like we all have example of Google already let us diagnose ourselves with horrible diseases, and AI has taken that to a whole new level. But I still go to the doctor. AI just lets me show up understanding the vocabulary, asking much better questions, and the same goes for lawyers, accountants, developers, really any real expert. So AI is my thinking partner, not my decision maker. I still make the decision. But for AI to be a good thinking partner, context matters. I've actually been asking people for context my entire career. When someone submits me a bug, I often get checkout doesn't work. And I'm like, okay, what are you doing? What happened? Who's the customer? Can you reproduce it? And the more context I have, the better chance I actually have of solving the problem. AI works the same way. So I always give it more than just the task. I tell it, what am I actually trying to accomplish? Why? What are my constraints? What does good actually look like? And when something goes wrong, I tell it why. This presentation is a great example. I didn't just say, make me a presentation about AI. We've talked through what I believe. I rejected ideas. I changed the sequence. I picked examples. And I repeatedly said things like, that sounds a little bit too corporate. I wouldn't say that. All of that compounds, and I don't just give AI instructions. You have to give it context. And once AI understands what I'm actually trying to say, it can help with another problem I constantly run into, which is finding words. I usually know what I want to say, but the problem is that I often just don't know how to say it. A difficult email is a fantastic example. I'm sure we've all used it when something is really hard to say. We know what we want to say, but we ask AI, how's this going to land? Is this harsher than I need to be? Can you make it clearer, shorter? And then there's one of my favorites, which is, you made that too nice. I still need to be firm. And it gives me back still a polished professional response to handle a difficult situation. And sometimes I'll use its wording and sometimes I don't. The important thing is I don't want AI replacing my voice. I've now authored 2 FeatherQuest books with AI involved throughout the process, but they're still my ideas, experiences, photographs, and decisions. And I don't want an AI generated FeatherQuest book. I want it to be my book, just expressed better and more clearly. So say it better and still sound like you. AI doesn't just help me express my ideas, it also helps me to build them. And this may be where AI has expanded my capabilities the most. I've always been willing to start before I know exactly where I'm going or how I'm going to finish, but AI dramatically shortens the distance between I have an idea and, oh, I actually see where this is going. I can ask it to look at the problem like a developer or a designer or a marketer, maybe an SEO specialist. Whatever perspective I need, I can just ask it to give me that perspective. And remember, I trust them like people, not the truth. And they can help me explore my outside expertise, figure out what I need to do next. And then when I reach the point where I actually need an expert, I bring them in. Except now I understand the vocab. I've explored the problem. I know what questions to ask. So just remember, your expertise is the foundation and AI expands the toolbox. So what happens when we put it all together? It starts compounding. And rather than just giving you a hypothetical example, I have a real one. And it started with an idea. It actually started with my bird photography. I had accumulated lots of photos and I want to do something more meaningful with them. So I didn't want to make another calendar. And I had this idea. What if I could use these photos to create a book that made birding feel more like an adventure? Something that gave you a reason to go outside every week, go somewhere new and look for something different and maybe make it feel like more like a quest. So I started figuring out what it could look like. And this was one of the early versions. And you know what? It's not terrible. I probably would have gotten A if I was still in high school. And I was proud of it. And I could already build something. And that's important to the story because this isn't that I couldn't do this without AI and then it came along and did it for me. I knew enough to recognize that I wasn't expert. And it was one of the first places that I knew this mattered was branding. I've spent 19 years at Namify, which is a branding company, and we do logos, and I've seen good ones and bad ones and everything in between. And I know at the same time, I'm not a designer, but I know that branding sets the tone for everything that happens afterwards. So the logo, colors, typography for the book, the website. And I knew that wasn't something I wanted to fake my way through. I mean, I am colorblind and there are limits to what we are capable of doing by ourselves. But before I called the expert, I used AI to explore names, ideas, directions, what I liked, what I didn't. And I developed a much clearer idea of what I wanted FeatherQuest to feel like. And then I called in the expert. I went to a designer who I trusted and I asked her to help me work through it. And I showed her everything I'd explored, and she told me that she was actually glad that I used AI first because I didn't show up and just say, I need a logo, make it cool. I came to her with actual ideas, directions, examples, and we were starting from a really good place. So she brought in the expertise that I didn't have, and AI, frankly, did not have anywhere near the capacity at the time either. And between the two of us, it all happened really fast. And after lots of iterations, well, not lots, it only took a handful of iterations. We got through it pretty quickly. So, and we went from my high school version to this, a professionally designed book. And it wasn't just the logo, the whole product now had an identity. And AI didn't have to replace the designer. It helped me be a better client for the actual designer. Then another friend said to me, "Hey, you should do a Kickstarter." And I'm like, that's never been part of my plan. But I basically started the process again. I worked through Kickstarter with AI. How does this work? What do I need to do? How should I structure it? What am I forgetting? And then I took these questions to people who had actually done it. I have a friend who is a self published author and she had run a Kickstarter. So I jumped online, chatted with her on Facebook. She referred me to a Facebook group with authors for Kickstarters. And it just became this loop of AI experts, learn, adjust, keep building, and back and forth. And eventually, I knew enough to launch. And 65 people backed it. We raised just over $6,000, and a pile of my bird photos became an actual printed book. So the multiplier wasn't just AI, it was AI helping me to get more of what I knew and the people I already had around me. And once I had the book, obviously, I needed a website. And this time I was the expert. Websites are comfortably in my wheelhouse. I've been building software and web applications professionally for 19 years, all through college, back to when I was a 16-year-old living in Mexico and got my first HTML book and was coding in Notepad. So this was no problem for this. I had a great professional brand to work with. And I started with WordPress, and AI helped me implement the style guide visually. And then, boom, I had a website. Now, I started with website intentionally because I knew it was something that I could get up fast. But deep down, I already knew I hated WordPress because it's WordPress and I build custom stuff. But I got it up quickly. AI also recommended that I just start there too and didn't get off on a tangent of setting it all up. And whether or not that was actually the right decision at the time, I don't really know. Because immediately I started fighting the implementation. AI would generate HTML, I'd put it into WordPress, I'd fight WordPress, I'd fix something, repeat over and over. And that friction ended up actually being valuable. Eventually I thought, why don't I just separate the content from the HTML and have it render exactly the way I want so that I could lose the inconsistency I was getting with AI. And so naturally, I set out and built a renderer in Python. The only problem was I'd never written in Python, but I knew websites, I knew architecture, I knew HTML, and I knew exactly what I wanted it to do. And AI was able to help me bridge the language gap to Python while I made the architectural decisions. At first, it's pretty funny actually, because I would have it generate the custom HTML and then I'd turn around and paste it right back into WordPress. And after doing that a few times, I realized, wait, why am I even doing that? Why don't I just have my renderer generate the entire website? And so visually, it didn't look much different, but now I owned it. And I don't know that I would have found the particular solution I did if I would have simply started and did exactly what I knew how to do the way I normally build websites. I had to hit that friction and go through that experience. And that friction led me to somewhere new that was amazing. So then I stopped thinking about just building the website and I started thinking about the entire web experience. Hopefully I clicked didn't work. There we go. So I started thinking about performance, accessibility, the best practices, all the SEO that comes with it, clean HTML with no errors and no warnings, search engine optimization with visibility and growth, security. Google understands now what FeatherQuest is, the brand's recognized, and in the end, the scores don't really matter because this is for people and the community started forming. And all of these little experiments and deep dives came from this. It was just an idea with some photos that became a book and then a Kickstarter and then a brand, a website, a community, and now a whole bunch of ideas that I haven't even gotten to yet. And so AI didn't create FeatherQuest. I did. I brought all my ideas, experiences, photography, judgment. I brought in great people when I needed their expertise, and AI helped me think more clearly, communicate better, learn faster, and build things I wouldn't have attempted before. It didn't replace what I knew, it expanded what I could do with it. And the part that I find the most exciting is I'm just getting started. So, what questions do you all have?
Okay, folks, this is the Q&A portion. And you can come off mute or you can put your question in the chat. Um, I get the first question, Mike. So you gave two examples, at least two examples of using AI to bridge language gaps. The first one was when you were talking about writing emails, right? And
Yep.
sending messages, and whether sometimes you wanted to soften and sometimes you wanted to strengthen your message. And then the last one you just mentioned was bridging CS language gaps.
Yep.
What other bridges are you using AI to cross or to use it to connect?
Oh man. I mean, literally everything, and that's kind of my favorite. I've used it as a personal trainer. I've used it to help definitely with legal stuff. I love to ask it legal questions. And I just start learning the vocabulary that people use. I'm helping one of our employees go through the visa process, and that is just insane, right? And we have a lawyer who's on our side, I guess, but I just don't understand what they're talking about half the time. And so definitely that is just more language, but really any educational gap you can have. And like I said, I don't trust everything it says, but at least it gets me to a level where I'm understanding the expert and I'm able to do some research and actually come to some better conclusions for myself. So it
Okay.
definitely, if you have a good starting point and you're willing to not just accept the easy answer and dig a little bit deeper, it's actually a really powerful teacher.
I have a question.
Go for it, Mike.
Does being a kind person come naturally to you? And how does that benefit you in your relationships, in business and life?
I mean, both. I'm genuinely a kind, nice person, and I value like the best for humanity. But if you ask my wife, I can be a jerk sometimes too. You know, I'm a very opinionated person. When I know what I want to do, I'll spell the math out or the logic and the plan. Say this is why this is right, and this is why we're doing it. And so I can get a little bit steamrolling. Um, but AI was way nicer than even I was. That was one of the funny things when I was talking to it. Like it's always like it'll take anything, and I'd simulate like I had a really difficult salesperson I would work with that I would do my best because I wanted to preserve the relationship. Like I know that I have to work with this guy, but he drove me bonkers. And so one of my fun exercises early on was I'd tell I want to role play. You be the CTO. I'm going to be the salesperson. And then I would just go off like ripping in. And then it was always just so kind back. And so it taught me some phrases and things I could use. But then occasionally it's a little too soft because you got to be firm and say, guys, like, I know you want to do it this way, but this is how we're going to do it. Right. And being able to say that in a more appealing way than just simply no or because I said so has helped me a lot.
But still standing firm.
But still standing firm. Yep. This is the direction we're going. Get on board.
Very cool. Thank you.
Mike, Ramon asked, within the process that you set up, are you using agents to handle parts of your project?
So that's interesting. I am a quasi early adopter, but also lag in certain technologies. I've found when I have a need, I go out and I find the tech and then I build, right? And I'm more than happy to build. And a lot of us get stuck in the cycle. It's what we know. Eventually, like that's why I'm grateful that I hire younger employees. They bring me new ideas. I see something new and I explore it. And AI hit me at the right time. I started using Chat GPT within a month of it being made available to the public. I've used it the entire time since and watched it evolve. And it's funny because when I first did the renderer, I found out that I could connect ChatGPT to a single code page and I could work with it and it could apply changes to it. And that was really fast. And it worked so well that I totally missed when they released Codex, which I just found a few weeks ago when my connections stopped working. And now I can read the entire repository and I can get through the whole thing even faster. And so it has got me thinking a lot more about how I will use agents in the future. Um, but like I said, they're just like people. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to get it wrong. They're going to crunch the numbers wrong. And so you have to be willing to tolerate certain levels of risk, right? The same way you do when you hire a new employee. You don't trust them implicitly yet. They have to earn that trust. And so, if and when in my process I start adding actual agents, they will be like new baby employees and I will monitor them closely. And as they go, they will earn my trust. And then I'll probably let them do more and better things. But I have a hard time just telling Codex what to do because it is so fast. Like by the time I finished my idea, 4 minutes later, it's back to me. And I found that that's a lot different because I'm already used to telling developers what to do. Like I'm the CTO, I have a team. I go, I draw out the vision, we talk about it, and then they go work. But they don't come back 4 minutes later. They come back a week later or 2 weeks later, and they're like, here I am. And so I can go and round robin around our 10 team members and give them each a project. And then that is a nice balance. But with AI, like I said, I get my idea out 4 minutes later, it's done, and I'm on to the next one.
Hmm. Oh, I might come back to that. Arun asked, as we integrate AI, do you have tips on how to protect the company data?
Oh, that one's a big, heavy topic for us right now. Thankfully, I have our system admin. He's kind of leading the charge there. And
So
I
are you
think that,
talking, are you wearing your Axomo hat now then, or you're,
yeah, now I'm
okay,
back to Axomo hat.
okay.
So, as a personal person, you control your data, right? Like, I know that I don't want to maybe paste in my social security number. Maybe I do. It depends, right? Like, we give our social out into it all the time. It just comes down to trust. Like, what AI agent are you working with? Do you trust that company? Do you trust what they're going to do with your data? Do you trust that they're going to scrub it? Um, and I think the big ones probably are. It's not in their best interest to keep that kind of stuff. But when it comes to Axomo and Namify, we got 200 employees. I cannot control what they're going to be putting in and what they're not going to be putting in. And so it's a lot deeper of a question. It goes down to training. But we are starting to consolidate our AI approved chat bots and put them into business plans and put controls in place and try and route it through stuff that hopefully prevents them from downloading the entire customer database, pasting it into something, and just leaking that all over to who knows where. So it's definitely a concern. It's something that we're trying to teach through training, but a lot of it is just the education because AI can accomplish all the goals that they want to accomplish and it can do it ridiculously fast, but they are risking a lot of potential company data that we may not want shared necessarily with the public.
Yeah, part of this reminds me of one of my first jobs, and I don't know why someone did this, but they like brought a thumb drive to the office and they thought they could do, I'll download this because then I can work on it at home, right? And then it was, well, now everyone has laptops and sometimes we take them out of the office and, where does the laptop, it gets left in the trunk and oh, my car got broken into and now we're into, right? But it's like every generation this is only over the course of, 25
Yeah.
years.
It's always
But
been a problem.
right. But now the new graduate first job, oh, this would be so much easier with AI. I'll just grab everything and drop it in and start working in GPT.
Yep, it'll use all the statistical analysis. It'll give you an amazing answer. And I try and coach my team. Data in general, it's helpful, but we rely on a little too much. Like I like to just tell them like, hey, pretend you want the number to go up. What would you do? Pretend the number would want to go down. What would you do? Right? Like who cares what the number is? Like what actions are you actually going to take? The report doesn't really matter. It's a lagging metric. It's like, what do you really want to do to drive the number? And it helps you see that you're having success in driving the number, but the report in and of itself doesn't do anything. That's your job.
Okay, question from Taylor. Other than when you have to do the quote human thinking, end quote, when do or should you not use AI?
I don't know yet. I mean, I like to push its limits, right? I'll give it anything and everything. Like I said, working out, health advice, planning travel itineraries, identifying a bird. Like again, it's more like when do you not go to Google to find the answer, or when didn't we? Like we were always searching, we're always trying to find the answer. And so, I'd say my only caveat there is be aware of what you're feeding it. If it's maybe too personal of information or too sensitive of data that you wouldn't be willing to just email out to the world, right? You might need to scrub it a little bit. So that's, and I going back to context, the more you talk to it, like, and I've seen this over the evolution. At the beginning, it wasn't so good, but recently it's fantastic. It learns about you and it learns about your preferences. And so if you'll tell it, no, not like this, or think out loud with it, it actually does learn a lot of how you think. And it is an echo chamber for better or worse, right? And that's why it can help you author really good content that doesn't sound like generic AI, but it only can do that after training it and after working with it. And your own personal GPT session, like it used to just be one chat now, and it had its memory, and you'd have to delete the memory and refresh it. It's learned to clean that up a lot, and it actually cross references across all your chats all the time now. So the more you can feed it good, useful information, the more it's going to pump out better results for you.
Mike, I've got a follow up on that, if you don't
Yeah.
mind. Um, I have a couple of coworkers who identify when I have let AI do some of my writing.
Right.
Uh, I always read through it and I agree.
Coworkers other than me? Keep
Uh,
going.
just a couple of coworkers, let's say, and um, it's more than one. Do you have a good approach for the writing that you do? I mean, it sounds like you're training it in your conversations, but
Yeah.
like in Claude, you can give it some writing instructions to sound more like you. Do you have suggestions around that or any suggestions on what I should tell my coworkers?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things. I mean, like I said, and you want it to be your voice, so you want it to sound like you. And so whatever that takes, whether that's through prompts or through training, obviously you're going to work on that. But at the same time, sometimes it's just about getting the message across. And when I'm writing like a company email recap, I'll be like, I'll still go through all my thoughts. I'll write the whole thing raw, right? Like this is what I want to say, and then I'll let it polish it, and I'll definitely read it before I send it. And sometimes I'll just tweak it a little bit because I'm like that. I wouldn't put that em dash there. I wouldn't use that big word there. But at the same time, it's going to read, wow, this is really well thought out. This flows really well. Like, and that's what we want, right? Like, we want to communicate clearly to people, and it helps us with that. And so at the end of the day, it depends on what you're writing. Like if you're publishing a book, 100% you're going to want to like be a lot more critical. You're going to go back and forth, and you're going to take turns being the writer, and then you're going to be the editor, and then you're going to be the writer, and then you're going to be the editor, and you kind of work back and forth. But if it's just a quick social post or something, no. But we all know, I mean, AI likes to exaggerate everything. I was doing X, but I learned Y. I did this, but like it has these themes, which aren't bad themes. The reason AI learned to do them is really good writers write that way. But when everybody starts writing that way, then it loses the novelty. And so then we move on to the next thing. And so you'll
Taylor
never
Taylor is a really good writer, Mike.
good. Yeah. And I found it was funny. I did an exercise, right? There's an AI, lots of people use AI tools to detect AI, which is just hilarious to me because it's going to keep changing and evolving. So I wrote my own thought. I gave it to it for a post, and then I posted back. And then I did an exercise where I took my words and its words, and I said, literally count word for word, which words of mine did you use and which words did you change and or add, and what percentage was actually my voice. And I found out that, and at the beginning, it's like, well, it's 90% my voice. I'm like, and I looked at the numbers. I'm like, no, try again. Like I can see I have way more than 90% of my words in there. And it did again. And like, you're right. 75% of the words are yours. It had changed or added 25% to smooth the flow. And then it said something interesting. 0% of the context is actually mine because the thought didn't change at all. It did not add a new thought. It did not change the meaning. It was all my original thought. It just helped me polish the voice.
Hmm. How often are you speaking versus typing with
So I
AI?
have not enjoyed speaking. I'll try it when I'm driving, and I've just not got the right voice, the right cadence. And I think that's just, again, part of me is that exercise of writing it out because you have to think more and a little bit deeper just to get the words on paper.
It just
And
feels
so,
wrong, doesn't it?
yeah, it does just feel wrong. I'll only do it when I'm driving. And every time, like, I don't get anything out of it. Like, that's when I feel like I'm not learning. Like, when I'm writing, I'm learning and I'm probing. And when I'm just talking, I'm just venting.
Hmm.
Moan had another question. When the AI starts hallucinating too much, what did you do to get back to the expected results?
And that's changed more and more. I mean, one, you tell it it's wrong. Two, you provide sources of why it's wrong and you let it learn. Like, I think it's one of the interesting things that it is this cycle where the more we put into it, the smarter it's going to get. Like, it's just kind of inevitable in that regard. Um, but you have to have your own judgment, right? Like,
Man, I
and
feel like if you're correcting it and giving it sources, you should get a credit towards your next month of usage.
yeah, that's right.
You just helped improve the model for free.
For free. Yeah. I mean,
Uh-huh.
that's my greater humanity. I don't know. And it's better for me too, right? Like at the end of the day, it's making myself better and it pushes me deeper into thought as to why.
Yeah, it also feels good to say you're wrong
Yeah, it does.
sometimes.
And it'll take
Uh,
it, right? A human's going to be like, wait, what? They'll get mad at you, but it's just going to take it.
um, okay. Arjun asked, would you recommend companies build their own model and run it locally?
I don't think so. I mean, unless you're got a background in it and you know what you're doing or have someone who does, you need an expert to do it. And the people who are building these models have the experts. So if you can contribute something great, but one thing I am working on again with my renderer and where I'm going with the future is, can you influence the answers the prompts are giving you by certain commands, right? And so I won't build the AI agent models, but I am working on building MCP servers and LMS.txt or whatever those files are, so that as the bot crawls my website and learns about me, it can discover what my site means. And I can also teach it about commands that it can then use to help other people or to build the thing that I want it to build for other people. And so that's where I see more of the leverage is, what can you make that you could actually leverage to make accessible to AI in a way that people who are chatting with it and using it get you as a source or get you as content or get you as the tool that ends up being used. And with some of the introductions to kind of I don't remember the exact protocol name, I think it's X402, but it does like payment walls that AI bots are starting to respect. Could you then start to leverage that where it's using your content and your knowledge and your data and you're getting paid for it, and the user doesn't see it because they're paying the subscription, they have so many credits already, but then OpenAI or whoever would actually pay you for access to those data and models that you're making on your end. So that's kind of how I'm approaching that.
So, Mike, I have a question, and it's maybe not related to AI, but just your strategy. When I Google Feather Quest, one of the things I think is cool, and I don't know, again, I want to know if this was intentional or if it was accidental. You obviously are on Facebook and Instagram, but then you did the Kickstarter, so that's going to show up in the results. You also have spoken a couple of times, so like a Provo City Library result, a Provo City result. Um, how did that calculate into your SEO? And yeah, was it intentional or was this
It's
accidental?
very, very intentional. Like, and everything from, again, going back to how the renderer rendered out my HTML, like I understand enough about what machines want to consume. And so it renders out perfect HTML that's perfectly tagged, that has alt text on all the pictures. When I'm meeting with people and speaking, I love to get, it's hard, but I love to ask to get them to connect back to my website. And I definitely do a lot of leading of, what do I want to say? And so the way I've chased, I know way too much about SEO. I went through the 2012 Google Panda Penguin crash where Nameify lost all of our rankings. We were number one in lanyards, but we weren't just number one. We were number one, number two, and number four through all the feeder sites. So I kind of an expert on the old SEO, where it broke. And then eventually, after working with all the experts like SEO Moz and a lot of local companies here, I ultimately just decided, and I could see the way technology is going, it really doesn't care too much about what you do. It more cares about the quality of the content and what is your intent. And so I set off to just make the best possible thing I could. And when I write my pages and when I write my descriptions, I put my human hat on. I say, if I was a person and I saw this search result, what would I want to read that would make me want to click on it? And when I click on it, would I really truly answer the question, or what was with my value proposition? Would they actually get the answer they were looking for when they clicked it? And so I've kind of used that as a guide for writing my titles and my descriptions, and then making sure that it follows that journey to the actual content that I'm presenting, answers those questions and keeps those promises. And now Google's smart enough to know that I do a good job at it. So naturally it likes it.
This is cool. Mike, thank you for coming out and sharing your journey and how you've leveraged AI along the way. Super cool.
Love it. Thanks, guys.
Okay, everyone. See you here next week.